So earlier today, I watched a video on YouTube, and it got me thinking about how I have all these resources at hand, and I have all this stuff that I can use, and why not document my journey to retiring myself in my mid-30s? So if you don't know, I'm a tin knocker, so I do sheet metal. I have an SM2 license in the state of Connecticut, and I've been doing it since 2011. So we're now in December of 2024. I have goals to retire myself from my 9 to 5 job by December of 2026. So realistically, 2 years, right? It's been a long journey to get to where I'm at now. My journey is obviously still only just beginning. I have a long ways to go, and I just wanted to kind of document it and share it with you guys, because it also helps me to remember everything that I've done to get to where I'm at. So yeah, this is my introduction to quitting my job and retiring myself in my early 30s. All right, so I'd like to really start in 2016. So in 2016, my girlfriend at the time and we were living together at my parents' house. I didn't want to live at my parents' house anymore. I'm sure you understand. So we made a plan to move out. And the thing about it that I didn't really care for was I didn't want to rent an apartment. I was already kind of upset about having to pay to live somewhere. You know, I always lived at home with my parents. We were like 22 and 23 at the time. So I never lived anywhere else other than her parents' house for a little bit and then back to my parents. So never had to pay to live anywhere. Didn't really want to pay to live and yada yada, you get the story. So decided, why not buy a house? Because at the time, you could buy a house and have a mortgage for about the same, if not less than what you were renting for. So that's just what we did. We looked at probably 20 or 30 houses before we came across the first house. And we closed on it in January of 2016. It was in Jewett City, Connecticut. A nice little house. It was a 3-bed, 1-bath, about 1,300 square feet. Had a detached garage on about a 1/3 acre. It was a beautiful little spot. It was a perfect starter house. Didn't need anything. Ready to move in, and we actually bought that for $131,000. I know in today's market, it's absurd to hear someone say they bought a move-in ready house for 131 grand. So again, one of the things that will lead on to where I'm at today and what helped me get to where I'm going. I had no intentions on using it as an investment, or I didn't even think about investing at the time at all. I had no thought on my future per se. You know, I always knew I'm with my girlfriend who I was going to marry, so I knew that was the case. And we owned a house, and I had a career that I was working towards. I was an apprentice at the time, a sheet metal apprentice, and just doing my thing. Happy to have just bought a house instead of renting, right? So that's the start of everything, right? And didn't even know it was at the time, but it was. It really was. So we bought the house and we lived there. We had no money either. So mind you, we bought this house with zero money down. I didn't even pay any money for closing or anything. I had technically 2 mortgages. I did an FHA and a CHFA, which paid for my down payment and assistant for closing and all that. So that was great, obviously. My mortgage payment was $987 for my first mortgage, and it was $45 for my second for the down payment assistance. So I was paying just over $1,000 a month, and that was what I said I wanted to pay for my mortgage for my first house. So that was great. We kind of struggled. We didn't really have a lot of money. We made it by without asking for help, because that's just the kind of people we were. Other than that, we lived and went to work and paid our bills and, you know, struggled a little bit, but that was at the cost of having our own house. So we were happy with that, right? So years go on, and we end up getting married in October of 2018. So that was the first year that I had to actually change my tax status, my filing status, right? So normally I would break even, maybe make $1 or $2 from state, federal, whatever it is, right? And she would make a couple dollars back as well. So we went to file married jointly, and we were going to owe, I don't know, $800 or something. And at the time, again, $800 was a lot of money. I wasn't happy about it. So I told her, why don't you just file single and you make your $1,000 or whatever you would make, and I'll file single and I'll just do my break even or make a couple hundred or whatever it is, right? And again, that was me being completely naive. I had no idea. I didn't know taxes at all. So we ended up owing $3,600. So that was my first mistake. So now I'm going, oh man, we went from owing $800 to now I owe $3,600, right? And again, I was kind of broke. I didn't have $3,600 to just pay my taxes that I didn't pay, you know? So I had to come up with a way. And at the time, I had worked a few prevailing wage jobs, rate jobs in the trades, you know, as a sheet metal worker, as an apprentice. So I got kind of lucky enough to have some money put away into retirement accounts and a 401k for me. So I had to tap into it. I didn't work at the original company I started with anymore because they went out of business, and I still had the 401ks that they had given me. So I ended up taking out, it was basically just enough to cover the taxes, and I paid the taxes through taking out my 401k money and just got that off my shoulder. Now, the thing about that was it was great that I was able to do that, but I told myself I wasn't going to make that mistake again. This is a one-time thing. Now that I have learned about it and I know about it, I'm not going to let it happen again. So that's just what I did. I learned a lot about taxes. I started researching as much as I could. I started to get really a fire up my ass about everything, about the fact that I work 40 hours a week, my wife works, and we both owe money at the end of the year. And I don't understand how, because I work, I pay my fair share, I pay my taxes, yada, yada, just like every one of you watching this does, right? We go to work, we pay our taxes, and we have what's left over, right? So as I started researching taxes and I started realizing all these tax advantages people get for certain things, and it's real estate is what started to, get really involved in heavy tax advantages and all this other stuff. So it kind of got me thinking. I'm like, wow. I started watching a lot of videos on real estate, and it started to really, it started to really build a fire up in me about getting out of this job, I read a book called Rich Dad, Poor Dad. I don't know if you guys have read that. I'm sure you've heard of it. It's an amazing book. And so that was one of the first books I read since probably going to middle school. I'm not a book reader per se, and I read that book and it kind of changed my life. And from there, I just kept going and going and going. And it's been a nonstop vicious cycle ever since. But, I'd rather have it be a vicious cycle of, getting better and progression and finding my way out and doing things for myself rather than just living the same life over and over and over again. So, that is a big portion of the start that got me to thinking about, oh, what am I doing? Why am I just going to work every day? What am I doing? Just going to wait until I'm 65, 70? I mean, at our age now, most people probably aren't going to be able to retire until they're 70. I work with all these guys that are in their 50s and 60s, even a few guys I've seen in their 70s still out in the field working, doing backbreaking labor. And it's just not going to be me. So I'm going to keep it short for this one. And that's just a start, though. That's the beginning of my journey. And it gets deeper and deeper and deeper. And, if you've made it this far, I appreciate you watching and just listening. It really is good for me to kind of reflect on everything that's happened in my life. And this is kind of my way of doing it. So, hopefully anybody gets any type of help out of this maybe, or just input, insights, just see a different perspective. I'm not saying my perspective's the best, but I am saying it is different. So again, thanks guys for watching. I appreciate it. And stay tuned for the next one where I go on further about what happens after we get married and I learn about this tax advantages and all this stuff. So thanks again.